Hello, everyone. Welcome to VizConnect, connecting you with the art of data visualization and storytelling. My name is Sagar Kapoor. I'm part of customer success team at Tableau. So VizConnect is a weekly global Tableau community call which helps you to connect with the art of data visualization and storytelling. It's a platform for you to get inspired, get motivated, and participate at Tableau community events. So all the sessions which are presented on VizConnect are uploaded to our YouTube channel. Go ahead, subscribe to it. Some great content waiting for you. Also, go ahead and join our LinkedIn group. Connect with each other, learn from each other. With that, let me go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. I have Simon and Chris, who will talk about real-world dashboards from table to insight. So Simon is a current Tableau Zen Master and a social ambassador and has been using Tableau for 6 years. His love for sports and Tableau come together through his co-lead of the community initiative, Sports with Sunday, which aims to unite members of the data fam with a passion of sports, showcasing weekly visits created by the community and giving people an opportunity to participate in a monthly sports data viz challenge. Chris has worked in data for a number of years and throughout his career has been in roles helping to communicate technology to less technical audiences, passionate about helping people see and understand their data and helping them to uncover insights and turn dashboards into real business benefit. Currently understanding how data literacy is a key step towards engagement with data. So without further ado, I will hand over to Simon and Chris.
Thank you ever so much. So I'm going to share my screen, and if you could just let me know when you can see, and then we'll make a start.
Yes, we can see us.
Cool. So welcome everyone to our chat on real-world dashboards from tables to insights. And I'll let Chris do the introductions to the chat and ask.
Okay, well, it's good. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all, and looking forward to it. So, as we said, I'm Chris Lamb, business partner and director at JLL, and my role is really to make sure that we get the best value out of using all the good data dashboards that we have, because it's only once you use data that you actually can recognize the value from it. So Simon, do you want to just say a few extra words about yourself as well?
I'm the complete geek. So I'm the one sat behind the scenes, leading a team of analysts. So within my team, we've got visualizers and we've got data architects. So transforming the data in Alteryx from transaction tables into governed models, and then visualizing it in Tableau to make it available and democratizing it to our end users.
Okay, so today we're going to talk to you about our global KPI dashboard, and we're very proud of this dashboard. And last year it won a UK-based award called the DataIQ Award, and I've got the trophy with me in front of me here. It's a transparent one, so it makes it very hard to show it to people, but it does say DataIQ Awards, and we won it for the best data story and data visualization. And we're very proud to win that. It was quite a hotly contested field. And what we're going to do today is explain to you a little bit about how we went through the development of that dashboard. So just to set the scene, what this presentation is, it's about some of our thought processes that we went through. It's not going to be a Tableau training course as such, but we are going to show you elements of Tableau and show you some of the tips and techniques that we used, or particularly Simon and the team used when they were building this dashboard. So let's begin to think about what we were trying to do here. And we wanted to understand what the problem was, because it's only once you really get under the skin of what a problem is that you can begin to solve that problem. And sometimes, you know, the business will come to you and say, I want a dashboard to do this, that, or the other. But when you really start to ask them and you start to probe what they really want, then we find out that they want to do something a little bit different. So we don't always get the right questions or the right ask from the business to begin with. And as I say, we want to go through those things with them to really find out what they want. And there's various techniques you can do that, but it's really important to talk to the business, to really ask them and also push them and challenge them. So, you probably have heard of some techniques called the 5 whys, when somebody says, I want to do this, and then you say, why do you want to do that? And then they give you another answer, and then you say why again. And often when you get to the end of that process, you'll actually find out that their real need is something different from what they perhaps thought they wanted. So let's show you a quick view on our previous dashboard. And the original dashboard we had was looking like this. And just to put it into context, we are working on a global financial account. We provide facility management services to that global account, and we have a contractual set of measures that we have to deliver and have to report on every month. And our first attempt at doing this was a very traditional heat map type dashboard, which you will see on the screen in front of you. All of the data today, by the way, has been sanitized, so it doesn't give away any confidential client information. It's all in general terms about metric 1, metric 2, and that sort of thing. But this dashboard did what it should have done. It showed us the measures, it showed us what the target was, and it showed us whether we passed or failed. But put yourself now into the shoes of perhaps the country or the global lead for the facility management services. And when they opened up that dashboard, they would see a figure on there like 99.09 and red. So that's that red measure showing up there. And that's the global view. So how do they go and find out which country perhaps didn't meet the requirement? Because making up this global view, there's 40 different countries, and then they want to know who it is that's dropped the performance. Perhaps it's one country, perhaps it's 5 countries. And then you see that we've passed on, say, 95% or something like that. What does that mean? Does that mean that we've missed 1 in 20 work orders? A work order is where we go to fix something, or does it mean we've perhaps missed 500 in 10,000? So while the dashboard was answering those basic questions and showing that we were meeting the contractual measures, it wasn't really giving us any context about what was underneath those numbers and underneath those values. And then the other thing is, this is giving you a monthly view. So, what was it like last month? What was it like 2 months ago? And there was no way really to be able to see how things had improved or got better over time. And then lastly, it's got a list of descriptions. It's got a KPI description number 12 or 14, whatever it is. So what does that KPI really mean? And if you are using this dashboard perhaps every month, you may not remember the exact definition. So there were lots of things missing. So when that global lead got this dashboard at the beginning of the month in his email one morning, he then had to spend a lot of time trying to dig into it and explore and understand what was really going on. It didn't enable us to tell our story, and it didn't enable him to tell his story to other people that he was reporting to as well. So we then went and thought about how can we improve this? So what did we think about when we went through this design process? So some of the questions we were trying to answer was, where did we miss the target? So I've indicated that slightly. We had a red measure, but which countries were actually missing it? But also, this is a global roll-up, and what can happen is that you can overall globally meet the target, but maybe there's somebody lurking underneath that who hasn't made the target, but because they are perhaps a smaller country or a smaller contributor to the data, then perhaps the overall target was still good. So we could miss those sorts of things. We wanted to see those. And then we wanted to see by how much. And we wanted to see what does that 95 really represent, so that we've got the context of the measure. Because, if you've missed 1 in 20, it's perhaps more significant than missing, say, 510,000. It puts those measures into context. And as I've said, we also want to see what happened last month and the month before and a few months before that as well. So we could see where we were getting better, or whether this month was just a small blip on the data, or whether we'd been getting worse over a period of time. And then we live and breathe the data as the data community, but the people using this are in the business and will be using this perhaps once a month. And we wanted to help them to understand what the data really means. Where is the data coming from? What's the definition of that KPI? So when we did this design, we went through all of those questions and explored all of those things with our client and with key people within the business, so we could get a good understanding of what was really needed. And then we set about trying to build this and make this work. So this is then the overall view of what this dashboard looks like. As you see, it's a much cleaner, fresher look than that original rather tired red-green heat map that we had. This one is much more engaging. It's got much more on it, presented in a much more friendly way. And now Simon's going to take us through some of the first, some of the thinking behind some of the technology that we've used there. And then we'll come back and look at some further view on the dashboard as well. So I'll hand over to Simon at this point to take us through some of the Tableau side of this.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I'm going to be brave and try and use Tableau live. So please forgive me if I get any technical gremlins, but hopefully everything will be all right. Just before I do jump into the dashboard, I just wanted to stress, many of you may resonate with that business today. There will probably be many examples of a heat map style view. We're not trying to say today that that is awful. We recognise that that is the reality for many businesses. We just want to be able to showcase that potentially, especially with a tool like Tableau, there is far more that you can do to drill into your insights and to expand beyond just a single number. So please don't think we're sitting here preaching in terms of this is awful. In many places, this is the reality, and don't be ashamed of that. But hopefully seeing what is possible will just open your eyes in terms of being able to do something slightly different. So as Chris said, that was the general design. A couple of things that we wanted to do on this was remove complexity whilst adding detail. And a lot of the way we did that was by interactivity and design choices. So a couple of things that we did. We chose to alert people visually via prompts. So we used the concept of an alarm bell. And this was inspired by both an iPhone, because an iPhone, if you've got a mobile phone or a smart device, you will probably be very familiar with when a notification comes up, it's symbolized by an alarm bell. So we said, well, if that's something that people have got a visual association with in terms of a notification, let's leverage that within our dashboard to highlight when we wanted to address, particularly how many areas have we got that miss performance out of how many total areas are covered across the metrics. And that was actually driven via a blog post via, I think it was Kevin Flernage, famous Tableau Zen master that I won't need to introduce. But on his blog post, I think if you go onto the flernagentwins.com, they actually share how to do that alarm bell notification. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you today in Tableau isn't something that in JLL we have developed or designed from scratch. A lot of the design choices we do are inspired by the Tableau community and inspired by seeing what people are doing on Tableau Public. And I think that's the reason why we want to make such an effort to share this dashboard back to everyone, because a lot of it has been inspired by all of you. So that's the alarm bells, and I'm going to jump into Tableau in a minute and show you that. But then we also wanted to do context dots. So we wanted to be able to say, hey, there's something to look at. It doesn't mean we've failed. It just might mean that imagine you've got 10,000 units. There may be a couple of areas that maybe have just one or two failing units. So it's not going to impact the overall validity of performance at a global or country level. But we wanted to say, remember, layer back the onion. We want to say, don't just take false assurance that the number is green or the number is compliant. Always be aware of all the potential questions you may be asked of your data. And again, we did that via visual prompts as opposed to masses of text or masses of charts. We tried to keep it simple. So on that note, I'm going to jump from PowerPoint seamlessly, hopefully, into Tableau. If Chris could give me the thumbs up that you can see, fab. So this is our dashboard, and sure enough, there is a technical gremlin because the icons have changed. So bear with me 2 seconds whilst I try and reset that, which I can't. So excuse the fact those up there are meant to be pills, but what you'll notice is this is the alarm bell. So actually in this, if I just try and go into full screen, so I will be able to click on the alarm bell and it will actually expand using collapsible containers to say where are those 42 incidents that have failed a KPI. And what you'll then list is just the pertinent information that you need for those 42 incidents of a metric has failed within a country. So what we do is we pop out the container. So you click on the alarm bell. It pops out the container using collapsible containers. That is one sheet that summarizes the overall ban, so the big number. And then we use a second sheet that not only lists the 42, but also provides you with that basic context of how much did they miss by and what are the numerators and denominators. So country 39, a random country, achieved 92.1% compliance, which was non-compliant. But it only related to 3 out of 38 units being non-compliant. So we're always just trying to give that flavour of how do we go beyond a number to encourage a conversation and encourage responsible action. And you can imagine if we weren't doing this via collapsible containers and visual prompts, the dashboard would get very busy. It would have an awful lot of text on it, an awful lot of ink on it, and it would be very complex for someone to be able to engage with. So by leveraging some of the more advanced aspects of Tableau, you're just able to encourage people to think about how do I go to the next level? How do I interact with this? And then you've got the notification. So this is the little orange circle. So you can see here for this example, the metric is 99.1% against a target of 98. You may think, take a deep breath, we're absolutely fine. But as Chris said, we want to encourage people to think, well, we may be fine, but are there any elements of concern that I need to be aware of? So the orange dot just allows you to hover over it and say, yes, for the chosen geography you're looking at, you're fine. But be aware, even though you're fine, there are individual geographies or individual locations where potentially the target has been missed. And all this is about is empowering and democratizing your end user to put them in control of the data so they don't have to come back to you as the analyst to be able to say, hey, help me understand more. You are giving it to them to allow them to explore, but you're not necessarily surfacing it the very first instance that you see the dashboard. So those are the alarm bells and the notifications. What we also do is then have Sparklines and Viz Tooltips. So I've already given you a bit of a glimpse of the Viz Tooltips, but the Sparklines were our way of saying, show the trend. So just jumping back into Tableau to give you a couple of design techniques that we chose to do that. So this circle here, the dot plot, tells you the performance for the reporting period. So in this example, it's May 2020. But we wanted to show how does that performance change over time. We could have done that via a heat map, but the heat map relies on people associating color, associating the number, and then working out how it changes over time. So in reality, a Sparkline allows you to see how it changes over time, but you don't have to interpret is 95% to 98% a jump of 3%. You can instantly see what the jump is by the size of the line. And we also then project the actual target line as the dotted line, just to add some context. And we color the dot. So if it is non-compliant, we use the same coloring as in the dashboard to be able to pull people's attention to say, yes, you've got an increasing or a decreasing trend, but actually, is it compliant? Is it non-compliant? And you're also, for us in JLL, we also try and use advanced statistical techniques. So in some of our dashboards, we actually go beyond this. So we don't do it in this one, but just to give you a bit of an insight into how we work as an organization, we also use statistical methodology to say, is this change significant? Because yes, it's all very well that something is fairly flat, but statistically, is a change significant? And there are some great techniques to do that in Tableau, using statistical modeling, using standard deviations to assess how much something has gone up or down, and do you need to worry about it? And as we also said, we've got the Viz in Tooltips, so at any point you can hover over something and find far more detail. Drill into it, encourage your users to explore, encourage them to have that value of curiosity that wants them to go beyond a number and genuinely understand how they can take accountability for their performance. So those are the Sparklines and the Viz in Tooltips. We've then got the context and we've then got the definitions. So the context allows us to say what Chris was asking earlier. Yes, something's 99%, but we all know the limitations of a percentage. It doesn't give you any of that context of saying it's X out of Y. So we wanted to make that visual in the dashboard. And we also wanted to show the definitions. And this is where I'm going to kick myself for the technical challenges because the icon isn't quite showing. So the shape has actually defaulted to a pill, so I apologize. But that there should be a little paperclip symbol. And what we've done is loaded into the data set. So this is all loaded into our architected data behind the scenes. So you can hover over any metric and be able to see what's the metric title, what's the target, but more importantly, get a written definition, not from the perspective of an analyst, but from the perspective of the business. So you're empowering the business to say, what am I looking at? What do I need to know? And there we see the additional context, an incredibly easy, just one number over another number, but we dynamically format it. So if you scroll down here into some of the other metrics, you will see that it's not always X over Y. Sometimes we simply quote the number of minutes. Sometimes we say it's not applicable. And we took time to write dynamic formulas behind the scenes to be able to make sure that we were representing the numbers correctly for the definition or for the KPI that you're looking at. So we didn't try and show everything the same. We really tried to target it based on what the metric needed to make it pertinent to what the end user was looking at. And then we also made deliberate design choices. And at this stage, I would just call out a couple of people. If you wanted to be inspired about design choices, about white spaces, please don't listen to Chris or I. Please go and look at Ryan Sleeper's playfairdata.com website. Ryan is a former Tableau Zen master, is an absolute data viz hero of mine, and he gives absolute examples of how if you strip ink out of a dashboard or ink out of a visualization, you can really encourage participation and maximize engagement. And I would say Knoll Knaflick-Nausbammer, who runs storytellingwithdata.com. She's another great data viz hero of mine that will be able to give you insights about how to design a dashboard or how to design a visualization that is engaging without being complex because you are overwhelming the end user. So the reason I share that is we deliberately said we would embrace white space in the dashboard. We deliberately wanted to make specific, distinct choices on shapes, specific, distinct choices on chart types, and specific choices about color. If you go back to the dashboard, you will notice there are no Sankeys. There are no complex chart types. Fundamentally, it's a dot plot. It could be a bar, but it's a dot plot. The reason we didn't show a bar is because we truncate the axes. So if we'd have shown a bar, it would have been misleading. So we showed a dot plot. We showed a line chart. In some of the tooltips, we show a bar. That's as complex as it gets. And that is deliberate because the simpler the chart choice, the less people have to do to interpret it. And in terms of the white space, you'll notice the the very subtle grey in terms of the background when we talk about the definitions and where the filters are. But the rest of the background of the viz is just simply white. We don't try and overcomplicate it with unnecessary use of borderings or unnecessary use of shadowing or colours. All of that just distracts from the end user. And in terms of colour, we wanted to make sure our dashboards were accessible. So in JLL about 18 months ago, we embarked with a visual design partner to redesign our colour palette to try and make it accessible and specific to data visualization. So on the right-hand side, you see JLL's accessible colour palette. So blue for compliant, grey for a warning, orange for non-compliant. But then to the left-hand side, we also allow people a switch to see it in traditional colours that the client may want to see. So we don't say no, but we give people the choice. But even for those red, amber, greens, we even tone those down, because even though they are still going to be inaccessible to people with colour blindness, it's demonstrated if you take some of the tone and depth out of those colours, it will just make it a little bit easier to engage with. So going back into Tableau, what you'll notice is we've just got a color palette switcher, which is just simply a parameter. So if we change it to red, amber, green, I will cross my fingers and hope this does what it should do. But what you should notice is all of the dots will then change from being the JLL colors to being the traditional kind of red, amber, green, and you can scroll down and you can see those along your board. So again, it's just about, we could have been obstinate. We could have turned around and said, no, we're never going to give you red, amber, green. What we said is we recognize that some people will still need it. So actually, in reality, what we'll do is empower the users by giving them the option to change it. And we also wanted to encourage people to get more information. So we had the paperclip to allow you to see, show me the definition. But we recognise that behind this dashboard are many other dashboards that go into each of these KPIs in more detail. So rather than asking people to remember the names of those dashboards, we embedded in the Tableau data source a link to those dashboards. So when you click on the arrows to the right-hand side, it simply drives a parameter action or URL action that will then open up the specific Tableau dashboards relating to each individual KPI. Again, nothing that's going to win us a viz of the day, but stuff that will make it easier for the business to get to the data they need when they need it.
Okay, thanks, Simon. And so just going to put myself back into the persona of that person I talked about, that global FM lead, the global facilities management lead. And that view we've been looking at is great for him or her when they open that up in the morning to be able to glance through. But in his or her business, what they've actually got is a regional structure. And so reporting into them, there are perhaps 5 different regions. And within each region, there are perhaps 5 or 10 countries. So the next question which we want to be able to explore, and which that view doesn't particularly do, is to say, well, you know what, how do the particular regions compare? When I roll up all of those countries in those regions, is the Asia region doing better than the Americas region, for example, or whatever it is? And then how does that region compare perhaps to the global value? So who's above or who's below that particular global target? And if you then put yourself into the position of then a regional leader, they will want to be asking the same sorts of questions of their countries. So a regional leader will want to be able to see at a glance, which of my countries have done well, which one's above the global value, which one's below, which one's perhaps has missed the target. Have any of my countries missed the target? So that view we've just been looking at doesn't answer all of those questions. And then another question they may think is that, okay, I want to see perhaps what that percentage means in actual events and what is the target. So we went back to almost a heat map view for this one, because this is going to work better for those regional leaders and to compare the different regions. So we haven't abandoned that heat map view for the other one, but we've reinterpreted it and reimagined it in this new view here. And Simon's now going to talk you through some of the features that we put into that to make that slightly more traditional view work in a new way to give people answers to those further questions.
Thanks, Chris. So again, we wanted to challenge ourselves to say, how do you take the static and empower the individual through interactivity to maximize their engagement and insights? So one of the things we did, again, inspired by the Tableau community. So this time inspired by Lindsay Poulter. If any of you don't know Lindsay, just watch her Iron Viz from a couple of years ago when she was on stage in Las Vegas. What she can do with parameter actions and what she can do with set actions is absolutely incredible. And what we said is, when we saw some of the stuff that Lindsay did, we wanted that in our dashboards. So again, we didn't invent this, the community did, we just adopted it within a business setting. So what we recognized is the visual appearance of a plus button is very intuitive when it comes to navigation. I think most people out there, when they see a plus, assume they can click on it to expand. And when they see a negative, they assume they can click on it to collapse. So we wanted to take that approach in the dashboard. So let's show you what we did. So I'm now going to go into the second tab of our dashboard, and this is our heat map view. So as Chris said, very traditional. There's nothing here that particularly screams, wow, that's an amazing viz. But what we're able to do is then take a particular month, and we can see the performance now split down globally on the right hand side. So you've always got that grounding anchor of how do I look globally. But what we can now do is split it by the regions. So you've got region 1, region 2, region 3. And you can at a glance see, well, this performance here is 98.3% for metric 18. Well, region 1 and region 2 are 100%. But region 3 is where the non-compliance is. So if you click on the plus button for region 3, you will then expand only region 3 into the detail. So what we've done now is we've used a parameter action to expand region 3 so that region 3 is no longer a single column. It is still a section, but it's now split down by each country. And you can now at a glance see it's country 6 that is causing the non-compliance for metric 18. And this really comes into its own when you go down and see that there are non-compliant countries or non-compliant metrics. And again, we then use the visual prompt of the circle to be able to say, be aware there are countries particularly for this metric that are non-compliant. So at every stage, we are encouraging the end users to take that next step. And I've got no idea, but my shapes have just reappeared, so I can now show you what the shapes look like for that's for the definitions, using a very simple kind of paper symbol. And that's how the alarm bells work and look in terms of the alarm bell with the coloured notification to say 42 is the number you need to focus on. Hence, that's the one that uses colour. And then the context of out of 324 is there, but we deliberately put the background to be grey because that's not necessarily the number you need to worry about or act on. So that's the plus button. We also, as I said, did a fixed global column for reference and context. For us, adding context is really important because it encourages our users not to make misinformed actions or take misinformed actions. We hope the maximum amount or the more context we can give, the safer it is for us to assume our end users are taking informed, appropriate action rather than the emotive, oh, I've got a metric I need to jump into, let's ring everyone around and ask what they can do to improve it. Let's encourage people to digest the data first, then act upon it. But we did recognise that in the dashboard, in this view, we do show the percentage. That's the default. But maybe sometimes the percentage isn't necessarily the number that people will want to see. So the clever thing that we did is give people a parameter that doesn't change the visual design in terms of the heat map, but it does change the label. So keep an eye on these numbers here, especially the ones where you see the non-compliant or the 90s. If I now change to non-compliant value, the dashboard stays the same, but the number quoted is now the number of non-compliant units within that geography for that metric. So remember, let's just use country 6, metric 18 as the example. If I look at the compliance percentage, it's 98%. If I switch it to non-compliant value, the user instantly sees, in reality, that is only one unit that is failing. So it again just tries to encourage people to understand the so what. What do I need to consider when I am consuming this data? And then we also leveraged Viz and Tooltips. And this for us is really where we added the value. So just remember, you don't have to show everything on screen instantly for your users to be able to access it. So on the heat map view, Chris very correctly said the heat map view does not show a trend. That's because it doesn't need to, it's not designed to, but it doesn't mean you can't make those trends visually accessible. So what we said is, I'll tell you what, why don't you simply hover over it and get the trend line in the tooltip? And you'll notice we just gave some visual prompts by icons at the top of the chart to say that the total volume is the bar and the KPI value is the line. Not rocket science, but just simple visual prompts to be able to make the user's experience as easy as possible to digest the data we're showing. Chris, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Simon. So that's taking you through the two main tabs of that dashboard. So, once we've done that, do we all sit back and relax because we think we've done a great job and we've built this fantastic dashboard? Well, actually, no, because, there's still an awful lot to do. And even getting to that dashboard that we've got there is a lot of other work to do other than just the Tableau work. So before we started doing this dashboard and actually doing the Tableau build, we spent many months actually looking at the data architecture, because unless you get some of those aspects right, you won't be able to build a dashboard in the right way. So the dashboard is like the tip of the iceberg. You can see that's the bit that everybody sees, but of course nobody really sees the data architecture that goes on behind the scenes. But it is absolutely essential, and it is there behind the dashboard. But also, once you've built this great dashboard, your work isn't over at that point, because what you then have to do is to get the business to adopt it and to use that dashboard. So then we need to think about, how do you release something like this into the business? And this is where many businesses, I think, struggle with adoption of data and adoption of dashboards. They'll build this thing that somebody's asked for and then just say, there you are, here it is, and let's get on with it. But we try to go much further than that. And if you want to get really good adoption, again, you need to partner with the business. And to do that, you need to help them to understand how to use the dashboard. They aren't necessarily experts in dashboard. They know they have to do it. They have to use it, perhaps, as we've said, once a month. So to help them, we will always produce things like communications. We'll produce a user guide. We'll do some sort of release video. And when we do something really big like this, which is a global project, we also do a lot of calls to help people see it and understand it. And for this particular dashboard, I think I did something like 25 familiarization calls with people to get them to understand how to use the dashboard and what it does. So if we can just go on to the next view there. So I mentioned their PDF user guide. And what we do is we produce a little guide with every single dashboard, which shows people where to click, shows examples of what happens when you click on that particular point. And we run all of our dashboards through a portal, and that portal supports having those documents alongside the dashboard at the same time. And that really helps people understand it. But you all know what, people don't necessarily want to read everything, and people like to often watch something. So we also do a video introduction for these dashboards, which take people through it. And we always make sure we've got a face on that video as well as taking people through it, so they can see it and effectively interact with somebody as they are watching that video. And of course, if you are doing lots of calls to familiarize people, just recording that video helps you there as well, because you can just play that video. And that's indeed what I did when I did those calls. So, you know, what difference has this made? We've spent a lot of time, we've done a lot of data architecture work, we've done a lot of development work on the dashboard, we've launched this thing into the business. So pretty large investment when we do that. And what difference this has made is that we can now tell the story. We can tell the full story of what's going on with those metrics. In the past, we struggled to see what was going on because we couldn't see under the surface. And it was very hard for our global lead to report onward to his peers about what was going on. We've made their life easier now by this dashboard. They can tell much more of their story, and we are telling much more of our story as to how well we are doing within this dashboard and within this particular work that we are doing. And it's easy for people to interact. They've got those visual prompts that they are familiar with, like that bell or that alert from their mobile phones. We're using familiar techniques for them to be able to see that and to explore the data and, as I say, tell their story. And it's all about storytelling. It's about a regional lead, a global lead, or perhaps a country lead, or an individual person being able to tell their story about what a great job they are doing, or perhaps just to see where things are not going quite so well. So we've really found that this dashboard has made a difference in that respect. And everybody loves it and is eagerly awaited every month when it comes to the release time.
And Chris, I think from an analyst point of view as well, I think the ability for the business to tell the story is what has really transformed it. But from an analyst point of view as well, it also pushed us out of our comfort zone a bit. So if all we ever do is present data in the same way, is always use a heat map, or always, well, it's a global KPI dashboard, it's reporting metrics, so it's going to be a red, amber, green box. We actually challenged ourselves a bit as analysts to say, can we do better? And the primary purpose or the primary source of inspiration was from looking on Tableau Public, looking at talks on Tableau conferences to see how others do it, and to push ourselves a bit to say, but if you only do what you've always done, you're never going to grow. And I think one of our cultures and values as a team is we always push ourselves to innovate, but we do it within a safe space. So for this project, deliberately, we gave our analysts some protected time to say, it's okay to fail. Try something, and if that doesn't work, try something else. But we wanted to push ourselves to say, let's not be restricted by what we've always done. And as a hat tip for that, because it was inspired by the community, within JLL, we have actually created a Tableau Public profile, and we have uploaded the JLL Global KPI dashboard to Tableau Public so that you can go on and consume and interact with the dashboard that Chris and I have shared today. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to make it downloadable because ultimately it is our commercial property and it is our intellectual property that's invested in this. But you can at least hopefully go onto it and start to explore it and see how we've done it. And we hope that that will inspire you going forward to be able to repeat the same success that we've had. If you do have any questions about it, please do reach out to us. There are plenty of people in JLL that are active in the community, whether that's on Tableau forums or on Twitter. So just to name a few, myself, Zach Balders, Neil Richards, Paul Chapman, Fee Gordon, and I'm going to miss others, Laura Sanford, you are more than welcome to reach out to us and we will more than happily answer anything, or at least connect you with someone that can answer. But we passionately believe we haven't achieved this because of what we know. We've achieved it because of what everyone else knows and what they're willing to share with us. So on that note, on behalf of me, thank you ever so much for listening. Our contact details are down there for LinkedIn and for Twitter. If you do want to reach out to us, please do so. But just as a final plug, if you are interested in terms of a career in analytics and you are looking for opportunities, you are more than welcome to reach out to us as well, because we're always looking for talent. And primarily, we're looking for people that have got an appetite to learn. So if you are interested in what we've shared today, please reach out to us and we'd love to have a conversation with you.
Thank you, Simon and Chris. I think one thing I was keep thinking that, but I was not thinking about all these small details when I was designing dashboards. So thank you for sharing all those details today. Do you want to take some questions?
Yeah, we're
Yes, of course.
happy to. Yeah.
Perfect. So if you have any questions for Simon and Chris, just go ahead and enter it into the chat. So there was one question with respect to designing of this dashboard. Like, it was an entire team who was working on the dashboard, or Simon, it was just you who was working on it?
Definitely not just me. So this is deliberately a team effort. So what we did is Chris and I led it strategically. So Chris is exceptional at speaking to the business and helping understand their requirements and challenging us to not get carried away with our inner Tableau geek of trying to show all the cool stuff Tableau can do. Ground it in, does it make a difference? But when it came to analysts working on it, we probably had 2 or 3 people working collaboratively. And we deliberately did that because we wanted to have diverse voices and diverse design choices. So we had one lead analyst who was Hesham Isa, who was working at the data information lab within the data school. Hesham was on placement with us, and I had the pleasure of working with Hesham to design this. But we actively encouraged Hesham to share his design choices and actually work with our data architecture team to scaffold the data and design the data in such a way that meant it was easy to consume in Tableau. So I would say probably 3 analysts plus Chris and I, but also the business had a massive part of it as well. Chris, anything you wanted to?
You know, just the other thing to add to that, Simon, is that within our own internal community as well, we do share new vises as we develop them, and we challenge ourselves and challenge each other as to why did you do that? That might be better to do that way. So it is really a big joint effort, as I say, with the data team and with our own internal team as well.
Thank you. The next question is that how you are making sure the performance of the dashboard in terms of the new features you're adding to it, right? Because one thing, when we go back to the executives, there is always a concern about a performance that it should load in 5 seconds or less than 10 seconds, right?
So this actually is a genuine challenge. So when we designed the dashboard, initially it did slow down. So we kind of challenged ourselves to say, make the gold standard dashboard that would do everything we'd want it to do. So we knew it was possible. And then we actually went through and performance tweaked, and if you like, enhanced the performance of it. And we deliberately did it that way. And I would actively encourage everyone to do it that way. Because if you worry about performance first, you'll restrict your design thinking. So what we wanted to say is, can Tableau do what we want it to do? Yes, it can. Well, let's build it, but let's not worry about performance to start. Let's show it can be done and demonstrate that the functionality exists. Then we went back and stripped out redundancy in the calculations, stripped out redundancy in the data, so we were minimizing the load in Tableau. And that then allowed us to improve performance. But I would actively say you're absolutely right to ask that, and it is always a challenge that when you're using some of the cool new stuff in Tableau, how do you have that? Because if it takes 20 seconds to load, is anyone going to wait that long? And it is a balance, but I would say don't be worried about it. You can always use the community. You can use the performance recorder to understand how a dashboard is behaving, and then use it to strip layers out to improve the speed.
Thank you, Simon. And was there any prototyping before in terms of designing your dashboard? Like when you said that Chris played a major role in terms of talking to the business, like what was that experience, Chris? Can you share about it?
Yeah, sure. So and this is true for all dashboards, not just true for this one. So typically you will have an exploratory session with the business, or people within the business, to understand their need. And from that, you will then go away with lots of ideas buzzing around in your head about how you can do something. So at that point, it's then quite important to come back to the business with some of those concepts to see which resonate, which work best with them, which chart types do they understand simply and quickly. And if you go through that sort of iterative process with the business, a couple of things happen. One is, at the end of it, you'll get a good product. But the second thing is that the business has also invested time and effort in the development of the dashboard, and they will feel much more bought into that dashboard, and therefore feel it's more of their input. It's not just us giving them something. They've had their say, we've listened to them. And if we haven't incorporated what they wanted, we've probably given them a very good reason why perhaps we could go down a different route. So we go down this iterative approach where we will understand their needs. We will then give them some different options. We'll then bounce those options around and then narrow it down to the final version, which we will then release. But as I say, they have bought into that. They have invested in that process. So they are part of that development if you go down that route.
Thank you, Chris. And just one last question over here. In terms of the dashboard you have designed is a long form dashboard, right? And it has scrolls in it. So any thought process it was there, just we should have a long form dashboard?
Yes. Sorry, Chris, go on.
Go on, Simon, go on.
So I would say the long form was deliberate to avoid the use of a scroll bar. So I think anytime you've got a scroll bar in a dashboard, you're at risk of people not knowing there's additional stuff they can view. So what we decided was each KPI is equally important. So we wanted to give enough space for each KPI. As soon as you restrict it to a single view with a scroll bar on, that can't be exported as a PDF. So one of the things that we did on the server is we actually subscribed people to this dashboard every month. If we were subscribing to a dashboard that could fit on a single page and had a scroll bar, that exporting to subscription to PDF would not be a good experience. But by having a long form, we could export it without any restrictions, it export fine, but also you were guaranteeing people would get the entire picture. And go back to one of our initial design choices, we didn't want to overcrowd the screen. So we deliberately said, give it room, give it space, and allow people the time and the effort to digest what they need to do without being overwhelmed by all the rest of the stuff that's on the dashboard. So it was a deliberate design choice.
Thank you, Simon. Chris, you want to add something?
No, not really. I just echo what Simon said. It was a deliberate choice. Yes, people are used to dashboards fitting onto a page sometimes, but it's important, as we said, not to crowd it, to give it space. It's much better to, and people are used these days to scrolling. If you look at anything on a mobile phone, what does everybody do immediately? They look at something, they will scroll up the page or down the page. So scrolling is perfectly acceptable, and I think don't be afraid of putting a long form dashboard into your portfolio.
Thank you, Chris. And just one last question, and this is more with respect to data literacy. And I have seen at JLL with respect to the success stories I have heard. So data literacy is one of your core strategy, which you want to go ahead and do it, right? So how
Yes.
are you making sure in terms of your users, you're going ahead and making them data literate?
Okay, well, I could do another hour on that, but we haven't got time for that. It's a program we are embarking on at the moment, is a data literacy program, and the key thing about data literacy program, it isn't just about which chart type to use. It's more than that, and it becomes a cultural thing within the business. So what we are putting together, or I'm putting together, is a program that's going to help people understand and confidently use data within business and also within their personal life. So it's helping people understand chart types, understand where data comes from, what sort of questions to ask. Do you need to be asking questions to make sure you're looking at the whole picture, or are you going to get trapped by just looking at the small thing? So this is a program we are putting together, and it's a fairly ambitious program, yes, but it will encompass all levels of the business with executive sponsorship, and we'll also have a series of data ambassadors around the business who can help us remotely and then feed the grassroots movement as well. So kind of watch that space, if you like. It's something that's very much on the tip of everybody's tongue at the moment, but few people have really embarked on it at the moment. I've been working with another organization called the Data Lodge, who are a US-based business run by somebody called Val Logan, who used to work for Gartner, and has done a lot of work in that particular space. So as I say, we are building that program out as we speak.
And so I would encourage one thing that Fee Gordon's our director of strategy. She always also encourages people to not necessarily think about it as data literacy, because there's a connotation with illiterate. But also think about data fluency and think of it as a language. And just it removes some of that fear factor of the connotations about being illiterate with numbers and how people perceive that. So just sometimes the language as well that we use in terms of the way we describe our engagement programs can help remove some of that fear.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Chris. And just one last question, Simon, and this is to you. In terms of participating in Tableau community, right? And I have always seen on Twitter and LinkedIn, you're always promoting and motivating your team to participate over there. So this is one of your strategy internally as a team to push them to participate to Tableau community initiatives?
Yeah, massively. So actually, when we recruit people, the primary thing we look for isn't a certification in Tableau, isn't that you've had a Viz of the day. We look for people that have got an appetite for learning and an appetite to collaborate and have feedback. And actually, the reason that for us, the Tableau community is so important is those concepts and values of collaboration, feedback and learning and innovation are ingrained in everyone that participates in community challenges. So if you're doing Makeover Monday or Workout Wednesday, you're doing it because you want to enhance your skills. So when we recruit people, if we see that people have got a Tableau public profile where they're actively publishing work regularly about community challenges, that's an insight for us in terms of their personality and their appetite to improve and evolve. So yeah, for us, we do it at recruitment, but then when you're in the team, we actively encourage people. We actually run an internal Viz challenge every month to put people out of their comfort zone and give them an opportunity to learn, but do it in the workplace. And that for us is critical in how we grow in JLL and we invest in our people.
Thank you, Simon. So with that, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Simon. It was an honor to have you on VizConnect, and thank you for sharing all the tips, all the inspiration, and motivating everyone in the Tableau community.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend ahead. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.